The afternoon sun cast long shadows across Willowbrook Drive as Linda Martinez poured herself a cup of coffee and settled into her favorite armchair by the living room window. At 52, Linda had lived in this quiet suburban neighborhood for nearly 15 years, watching families come and go, children grow up, and seasons change. She considered herself the unofficial neighborhood watch, always keeping an eye on things from her strategic perch behind the sheer curtains. Today felt different somehow. Maybe it was the way the autumn leaves rustled with more urgency, or perhaps it was the unusual number of delivery trucks that had rumbled down their normally peaceful street. Linda pulled her cardigan tighter around her shoulders and took a sip of her coffee, scanning the sidewalk as she did every afternoon around 3 o'clock. That's when she noticed them. A tall man was walking slowly down the sidewalk with a young girl who looked to be about 7 or 8 years old. Linda's eyes narrowed as she observed their movements. The man was black, probably in his 30s, wearing a navy blue jacket and dark jeans. The little girl skipped beside him, her backpack bouncing with each step, but something about the scene made Linda's stomach tighten with unease. They were moving too slowly. Much too slowly for people who belonged in the neighborhood. Linda had lived here long enough to know the rhythm of local families. Parents walking with their children had purpose, direction. They walked quickly because they had places to be, homework to supervise, dinner to prepare. But this man and child were meandering, stopping every few houses to look around, sometimes pointing at different properties. The little girl tugged on the man's sleeve, and he stopped in front of the Henderson house 3 doors down. Linda leaned forward, her coffee cup forgotten in her hands. The man pulled out his phone and appeared to be taking pictures. Her heart began to race. Why would someone be photographing houses in their neighborhood? Linda had seen enough crime shows to know that burglars often scouted locations during daylight hours, sometimes even bringing children to make themselves look less suspicious. The thought sent a chill down her spine. She watched as the man showed something on his phone screen to the little girl, who nodded enthusiastically and pointed at another house across the street. They continued their slow journey, and Linda found herself moving from window to window to keep them in sight. The man kept checking his phone, sometimes typing on it, sometimes taking more pictures. The little girl seemed excited about something, chattering away and gesturing at the various houses they passed. When they stopped in front of the Peterson house, Linda's concern turned to alarm. Mrs. Peterson was 83 years old and lived alone since her husband passed away 2 years ago. The man stood there for what felt like an eternity, studying the house, the yard, the placement of the windows. He even walked partway up the driveway before the little girl called him back to the sidewalk. Linda's hands trembled slightly as she reached for her phone. She had never called the police before, but something about this situation felt wrong. The man's behavior was too deliberate, too calculated, and the way he kept looking around as if checking to see if anyone was watching him made her stomach knot with anxiety. She speed-dialed her neighbor Carol, who lived 2 houses down. "Carol, are you home? Are you looking out your window?" Linda whispered urgently into the phone. "Linda, what's wrong? You sound upset. There's a man walking through the neighborhood with a little girl, and I think he's casing houses. He's been taking pictures and studying every property he passes. I've been watching him for 20 minutes now." "Really? That does sound strange. Where is he now?" Linda peered through the curtains again. The man and girl had moved further down the street and were now standing in front of the Mitchell family's house. The Mitchells were away on vacation in Florida, something the whole neighborhood knew because they had asked Linda to keep an eye on their place. He's in front of the Mitchell house now. "Carol, they're away and he seems to know it. He's looking around like he's checking if anyone's watching." "Oh my goodness, Linda, do you think we should call the police?" "I'm thinking about it. This just doesn't feel right. Legitimate people don't walk this slowly through neighborhoods taking pictures of houses, and the little girl might not even be his daughter. She could be part of some scheme." Linda continued watching as the man pulled out his phone again, seemingly reading a text message. The little girl tugged at his jacket and pointed toward something Linda couldn't see from her angle. The man nodded and started walking again, but instead of continuing down Willowbrook Drive, they turned the corner toward Maple Street. "They're heading toward the main road now," Linda reported to Carol. "But I have a feeling they'll be back. People who are planning something always do a few passes to study the area. What should we do?" Linda's mind raced. She thought about Mrs. Peterson living alone, About the Mitchell family's empty house, about all the working parents who wouldn't be home for another 2 hours. Someone needed to take action. I'm going to call 911, Linda decided. Better safe than sorry. If I'm wrong, then no harm done. But if I'm right and something happens to one of our neighbors, I'll never forgive myself. After hanging up with Carol, Linda sat for a moment, staring at her phone. She had never been the type of person to call the police unnecessarily, but everything about what she had witnessed felt suspicious. The slow walking, the picture taking, the way the man seemed to be studying each house so carefully. She thought about her own grandchildren, who were about the same age as the little girl she had seen. What if someone was using them in some kind of criminal activity? What if that little girl was in danger and didn't even know it? Linda's finger hovered over the emergency call button. In her 15 years in this neighborhood, she had developed a sense for what belonged and what didn't. This definitely didn't belong. Taking a deep breath, she pressed the 3 numbers that would change everything for everyone involved. As the phone rang, Linda looked out the window one more time, making sure she could accurately describe what she had seen to the dispatcher, who would soon answer her call. Wayne 1, what's your emergency? Linda gripped her phone tighter, her heart pounding as she heard the calm, professional voice of the dispatcher. For a split second, she almost hung up, but then she remembered the way the man had studied each house so carefully. Hi, I need to report some suspicious activity in my neighborhood, Linda began, her voice slightly shaky. There's a man walking through our area with a young child, and I believe he's been casing houses for the past half hour. Can you tell me your location, ma'am? I'm at 247 Willowbrook Drive. The man was walking down my street, but he turned toward Maple Street about 5 minutes ago. Can you describe this individual for me? Linda peered through her curtains again, trying to spot them, but they had disappeared around the corner. He's a black male, probably in his 30s, wearing a dark blue jacket and jeans. He's tall, maybe 6 feet or so. The child with him is a young girl, looks to be around 7 or 8 years old. What makes you believe this activity is suspicious? Well, they've been walking extremely slowly through the neighborhood for over 20 minutes. The man has been taking pictures of houses with his phone, and he seems to be studying each property very carefully. He even walked partway up Mrs. Peterson's driveway before the little girl called him back. Mrs. Peterson is elderly and lives alone. The dispatcher's voice remained calm and professional. I understand your concern. Are they still in the area? They turned the corner toward Maple Street a few minutes ago, but I have a feeling they might come back. People who are planning something usually make multiple passes through an area. We'll send an officer to check on the situation. Can you continue to monitor from your location and call back if you see them return? Of course. Thank you so much. I just want to make sure our neighborhood stays safe. Meanwhile, 3 blocks away, Dr. Kevin Williams was having one of those perfect father-daughter moments that he would remember forever. His 8-year-old daughter, Ruby, had been assigned a school project about community traditions and celebrations, and she had specifically asked to walk through different neighborhoods to see how families decorated for Halloween. "Daddy, look at that one!" Ruby exclaimed, pointing to an elaborate display featuring a skeleton family having a tea party in someone's front yard. "Can you take a picture for my project?" Kevin smiled and pulled out his phone, snapping a photo of the creative display. Mrs. Chen is going to love seeing all these different ideas when you present your project. Ruby had been so excited about this assignment. For the past week, she had talked about nothing else, planning which neighborhoods they would visit and what kinds of decorations she hoped to see. Kevin had cleared his afternoon schedule at the hospital specifically for this father-daughter adventure. "Can we go down that street next?" Ruby asked, pointing toward Willowbrook Drive. "I want to see if they have any of those giant inflatable decorations like the ones in our neighborhood." "Sure, sweetheart. We have plenty of time before we need to head home for dinner." As they turned onto Willowbrook Drive, Kevin's phone buzzed with a text from his wife, Dr. Rachel Williams. "Don't forget we need milk for tomorrow's breakfast. Can you grab some on the way home?" Kevin quickly typed. "Head back, got it. Ruby and I are looking at Halloween decorations for her school project. We'll stop at the store after." "Daddy, why did you stop?" Ruby asked, tugging on his jacket. "Just answering Mommy's text, sweetheart. She wants me to remember to buy milk." They continued down the street, Ruby's excitement infectious as she pointed out each decoration. Kevin found himself seeing the neighborhood through her 8-year-old eyes, marveling at the creativity and effort families put into their displays. Back at the police station, Officers Michael Rodriguez and Jennifer Thompson were finishing their patrol of the downtown business district when the call came through on their radio. Unit 47. We have a report of suspicious activity on Willowbrook Drive. Caller reports a black male with a young female child taking photographs of residences. Possible burglary reconnaissance. Officer Rodriguez picked up the radio. Unit 47 responding. ETA approximately 8 minutes. Thompson, who had been on the force for 12 years, had handled dozens of these types of calls. Most of the time they turned out to be misunderstandings, but department policy required them to investigate every report thoroughly. What do you think? Rodriguez asked as they turned toward the Willowbrook area. Sounds like it could be nothing, but you never know. Could go either way, Thompson replied. The fact that there's a child involved makes it seem less likely to be criminal activity. But we've seen criminals use kids as cover before. As they drove through the quiet suburban streets, both officers mentally prepared for various scenarios. The best-case scenario would be a simple misunderstanding that could be cleared up with a brief conversation. The worst-case scenario would involve actual criminal activity that might put the child at risk. There, Rodriguez pointed toward the intersection of Maple and Willowbrook. I see a man with a young girl. Thompson spotted them too. The man was kneeling down beside the child, who was pointing excitedly at a house decorated with dozens of carved pumpkins, arranged like a pumpkin patch in the front yard. Dispatch. Unit 47 has visual contact with the subjects on Maple Street near Willowbrook Drive, approaching for initial contact. Kevin looked up as he heard a car door slam nearby. His stomach dropped when he saw 2 police officers walking toward them. Ruby was still chattering excitedly about the pumpkin display, completely unaware of the approaching officers. Good afternoon, Officer Rodriguez called out in a friendly tone. Could we speak with you for a moment? Kevin stood up slowly, his mind racing. He had been through situations like this before, and he knew the importance of staying calm and cooperative, especially with Ruby present. Of course, officers. Is there a problem? We received a call about someone taking photographs in the neighborhood. We're just following up to make sure everything's okay. Ruby looked up at her father with confusion. Daddy, why are the police here? Kevin placed a gentle hand on his daughter's shoulder. It's okay, sweetheart. The officers just want to talk to us for a minute. Officer Thompson stepped closer, her demeanor professional but not threatening. Sir, could you tell us what you're doing in this area today? Certainly. My daughter Ruby has a school project about community celebrations and traditions. We've been walking through different neighborhoods looking at Halloween decorations so she can take pictures for her presentation. And you live in this area? We live about 4 blocks from here in the Oak Hill section. Ruby goes to Riverside Elementary, and her teacher assigned this project to help students learn about their community. Officer Rodriguez noticed that the man seemed articulate and calm, and the child appeared comfortable and happy. Nothing about their demeanor suggested anything suspicious, but he needed to follow protocol. Would you mind showing us the photographs you've taken today? Not at all, Kevin replied, pulling out his phone. Ruby, why don't you show the officers some of your favorite decorations? Ruby's face lit up as she took the phone from her father. Look, this house had a whole skeleton family, and this one had a giant spider in a web, and oh, this one had the most amazing jack-o'-lanterns I've ever seen. She scrolled through the photos eagerly, providing commentary for each image. Officer Thompson found herself smiling at the child's enthusiasm and the obvious innocence of the photographs. But just as the situation seemed to be resolving itself peacefully, Linda Martinez appeared at the end of her driveway, having spotted the police cars from her window. She had been watching the entire interaction, and something still didn't feel right to her. Officers! Officers! Linda called out as she hurried down her driveway, her house slippers slapping against the pavement. I'm the one who called you. Kevin felt his stomach tighten as he watched the middle-aged woman approach. Ruby instinctively moved closer to her father, sensing the sudden change in the atmosphere. Ma'am, please stay back while we finish our conversation, Officer Rodriguez said politely but firmly, but Linda was determined to be heard. I've been watching them for over 30 minutes, she said, slightly out of breath from her rushed walk. They've been taking pictures of houses moving very slowly, studying each property. That's not normal behavior for this neighborhood. Officer Thompson turned to address Linda while keeping one eye on Kevin and Ruby. We appreciate you calling this in, ma'am. We're just gathering information right now. But you need to understand, Linda continued, her voice rising with conviction. I've lived here for 15 years. I know every family on this street and I've never seen them before. People don't just wander around taking pictures of houses unless they're planning something. Kevin took a deep breath, trying to remain calm for Ruby's sake. Officers, as I explained, we live in Oak Hills, just 4 blocks away. My daughter goes to Riverside Elementary School and this is a school project. Oak Hills? Linda scoffed. That's one of the most expensive neighborhoods in the city. What would you be doing walking around here taking pictures? The implication in her tone was unmistakable, and Kevin felt a familiar anger beginning to build in his chest. He had dealt with assumptions like this before, but never in front of his daughter. Ma'am, people from all neighborhoods have the right to walk on public sidewalks. Officer Rodriguez interjected, sensing the tension escalating. Daddy, why is that lady being mean? Ruby whispered, tugging on Kevin's jacket. Kevin knelt down to Ruby's eye level. She's not being mean, sweetheart. She's just confused about what we're doing here. Sometimes people get confused when they don't understand something. But we're just taking pictures for my school project, Ruby said, her voice small and confused. Linda overheard this and shook her head vigorously. A school project? Come on, officers. What school would assign children to walk around photographing other people's houses? That's not a real assignment. Officer Thompson stepped between Linda and Kevin's family. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step back and let us handle this investigation. Investigation? Kevin stood up slowly. Officers, are we being detained? Because if we're free to go, I'd like to take my daughter home. She's getting upset. Indeed, Ruby's eyes were beginning to fill with tears. The excitement she had felt about her school project was rapidly being replaced by confusion and fear. She didn't understand why the nice lady from the house was saying bad things about her daddy, or why the police officers seemed so serious. Sir, we just need to verify a few things, and then you'll be free to go, Officer Rodriguez said. Could I see some identification? Kevin reached for his wallet, his movements deliberate and slow. He had taught himself these careful movements years ago, understanding that any sudden motion could be misinterpreted. Here's my driver's license. As Officer Rodriguez examined the license, Linda continued her commentary. I'm telling you, something isn't right here. I've seen enough crime shows to know how these things work. They bring children to make themselves look innocent, and then they come back later when no one's watching. That's enough, Officer Thompson said firmly to Linda. Please return to your property and let us do our job. But Linda wasn't finished. The little girl seemed scared of him. Look at how she's clinging to him. Children don't act like that with their real parents. Ruby, who had been trying to be brave, finally burst into tears. I want to go home. Daddy, I want to go home now. Kevin's protective instincts kicked into overdrive. Officers, my daughter is 8 years old and she's terrified. This woman is making completely unfounded accusations about me and my child. How much longer is this going to take? Officer Rodriguez was running Kevin's license through the system on his portable device, while Officer Thompson tried to manage the increasingly volatile situation. Mr. Williams, Rodriguez said, reading from the license. This shows your address is 1247 Oak Hill Lane. That's about 4 blocks from here, correct? Yes, exactly as I told you. And the child's name? Ruby Williams. She's my daughter. Do you have any documentation to prove that relationship? Kevin felt his patience wearing thin. Officers, I don't carry my daughter's birth certificate with me when we go for walks. What exactly am I being accused of here? Linda jumped in again. He can't prove she's his daughter. See, I told you something was wrong. Ma'am, final warning, Officer Thompson said sternly to Linda. Return to your property now or I'll have to ask you to move further away. Ruby was crying harder now, and her tears were breaking. Kevin's heart. Daddy, why won't they let us go home? I don't want to take pictures anymore. I just want to go home. Kevin picked up his daughter, holding her close. It's okay, baby. We'll go home soon. These officers are just doing their job, and then we'll go home and tell Mommy about all the cool decorations we saw. Officer Rodriguez's device beeped, indicating that Kevin's license information had been processed. What appeared on the screen made him pause and look more carefully at the readout. Sir, it says here that you're Dr. Kevin Williams. Is that correct? Yes, I'm a pediatric surgeon at City General Hospital. Linda's expression changed slightly. She hadn't expected that answer. Officer Thompson noticed her partner's reaction. Rodriguez, what is it? The address checks out and there's additional information here, Rodriguez said, studying his screen more carefully. Meanwhile, Ruby had stopped crying, but was still clinging tightly to her father. She looked at Officer Thompson with wide, tear-filled eyes. "My daddy fixes sick children," she said in a small voice. "He makes them better when their hearts don't work right. He's not a bad person." Officer Thompson felt a pang of sympathy for the little girl. "What's your teacher's name, sweetheart?" "Mrs. Chen. She teaches 3rd grade at Riverside Elementary. She gave us the project about community traditions because she wants us to learn about how different families celebrate holidays." The specificity of Ruby's answer, combined with her obvious distress and the information appearing on Officer Rodriguez's screen, was painting a very different picture than what Linda had initially reported. "Officers," Kevin said quietly, "I understand you have a job to do, but my daughter has been traumatized enough for one day. If you need to verify anything else, I'm happy to provide my work contact information, my wife's contact information, or anything else you need. But I'd really like to take Ruby home now." Officer Rodriguez looked at his screen one more time, then at Linda, who was still hovering nearby despite being asked to step back multiple times. "Ma'am," he called to Linda, "I think there may have been a misunderstanding here." But Linda wasn't ready to back down. "A misunderstanding? I know what I saw. I've lived in this neighborhood long enough to know when something doesn't belong." Those words hung in the air like a challenge, and everyone present understood exactly what she meant. The real issue wasn't about photography or school projects or suspicious behavior. Ruby looked up at her father with confusion. "Daddy, why did she say we don't belong here? We're just taking pictures." Kevin's jaw tightened as he struggled to find an age-appropriate way to explain prejudice to his 8-year-old daughter. Officer Rodriguez stared at his screen for a long moment, reading and rereading the information that had appeared. What he was seeing didn't just clear up the situation. It completely transformed it in a way that left him speechless. "Thompson," he said quietly to his partner, "you need to see this." Officer Thompson moved closer to look at the portable device. Her eyes widened as she read the information displayed there. Dr. Kevin Williams wasn't just any doctor. According to the database, he was the chief of pediatric cardiac surgery at City General Hospital. But that wasn't what made both officers pause. There was a special notation in his file indicating that he had received a civilian commendation from their own police department just 6 months earlier. "Sir," Officer Rodriguez said, his tone notably more respectful than before, "it says here that you received a commendation from our department. Can you tell me about that?" Kevin shifted Ruby to his other arm. She was getting heavy, but he wanted to keep holding her until this situation was resolved. "In March, I was driving home from the hospital when I came across a car accident. A family with 2 young children was trapped inside their vehicle. I provided medical assistance until the paramedics arrived. The notation here says you saved the life of a 6-year-old boy who had gone into cardiac arrest." Thompson read from the screen. "I did what any doctor would do," Kevin said simply. Linda, who had been listening from her position a few feet away, felt her certainty beginning to waver, but she wasn't ready to admit she might have been wrong. "Anyone can claim to be a doctor," she said, though her voice lacked the conviction it had carried earlier. Ruby lifted her head from her father's shoulder. "My daddy really is a doctor. He has a special room at the hospital where he operates on children's hearts. I've seen it." Officer Rodriguez was reading more information from his screen. "Sir, it also says here that you've been nominated for the Community Service Award by the Mayor's office. Is that accurate?" "I wasn't aware that information would be in a police database," Kevin replied. Surprised. "The Mayor's office works with our department on community recognition programs," Officer Thompson explained. "According to this, you volunteer at the Free Children's Clinic every Saturday. And you've provided free surgeries to dozens of children whose families couldn't afford the procedures." Linda's face was beginning to flush with embarrassment, but she still wasn't ready to back down completely. "Well, how was I supposed to know any of that?" He was still acting suspicious, taking pictures of houses. "Ma'am," Officer Thompson said, turning to face Linda directly, "this man is one of the most respected members of our community. He's saved children's lives, both in his professional capacity and as a volunteer citizen. His daughter was working on a legitimate school project." "But," Linda started, then stopped. The evidence was overwhelming, and even she was beginning to realize the magnitude of her mistake. Ruby, meanwhile, had been listening to the adults talk about her father with growing pride. "Daddy, they know about how you help sick children?" "It seems they do, sweetheart," Kevin said softly. Officer Rodriguez closed his device and looked directly at Linda. "Ma'am, I think we need to have a conversation about what really happened here today." "What do you mean?" Linda asked, though her voice was much smaller than it had been earlier. "You called 911 to report a black man walking through your neighborhood with a child," Rodriguez said calmly but firmly. "This man turns out to be one of the most prominent doctors in our city, a recognized community volunteer, and a hero who has been honored by our own police department. His daughter was working on a school assignment. They live 4 blocks away in one of the most affluent neighborhoods in the city." Linda's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. "The question is," Officer Thompson continued, "would you have called 911 if Dr. Williams had been white?" The question hung in the air like a stone dropped into still water, creating ripples that spread outward and touched everyone present. Ruby, who had been listening with the keen attention that children often bring to adult conversations, looked at the police officers with sudden understanding. "Is that lady afraid of us because our skin is brown?" The innocent directness of the question hit everyone like a physical blow. Kevin felt his heart break a little for his daughter's lost innocence, while both officers shifted uncomfortably. Linda looked as if she might be sick. "Sweetheart," Kevin said gently, "sometimes people make mistakes about other people because they don't know them very well." But Ruby, with the clear logic of an 8-year-old, wasn't satisfied with that answer. "But she didn't try to know us. She just called the police." Officer Rodriguez knelt down so he was at Ruby's eye level. "You're absolutely right, young lady. And I want you to know that what happened today was not okay. Your daddy is a hero and you were just doing your homework." "Dr. Williams," Officer Thompson said, "I want to personally apologize for this situation. You and your daughter should never have been put through this." Kevin nodded, though his expression remained guarded. "I appreciate that, officer. But this isn't the first time something like this has happened, and it probably won't be the last." "It happened before?" Ruby asked, looking up at her father with concern. "Sometimes, baby. But that's why we always try to be kind to everyone we meet. We never know what someone else is going through or what they might be afraid of." Linda, who had been standing in stunned silence, finally found her voice. I made a mistake," she said quietly. "Yes, you did," Officer Rodriguez said. "A significant one." "I was just trying to protect my neighborhood," Linda said weakly. "From what?" Officer Thompson asked pointedly. "From a father helping his daughter with homework? From a doctor who saves children's lives? What exactly were you protecting your neighborhood from?" Linda had no answer that wouldn't make her sound even worse than she already did. Ruby tugged on her father's shirt. "Daddy, can we go home now? I want to tell Mommy about the skeleton family and the giant spider web." Kevin smiled at his daughter's resilience. Despite everything that had happened, she was still thinking about the fun parts of their walk. "Of course, sweetheart." "Officers, are we free to go?" "Absolutely," Rodriguez said. "Again, our apologies for this incident." As Kevin started to walk away with Ruby, Officer Thompson called after them. "Dr. Williams, wait a moment." Kevin turned back, hoping there wouldn't be any additional complications. "I want you to know that this incident will be documented, and we'll be having a conversation with the caller about appropriate use of emergency services." Linda's face went pale. "What does that mean?" "It means," Officer Rodriguez explained, "that filing false police reports is a serious matter, and calling 911 because you're uncomfortable with people of a certain race walking through your neighborhood could be considered harassment." "But I didn't say anything about race," Linda protested. "You didn't have to," Thompson replied. "Your actions spoke loud enough." Kevin had been listening to this exchange, and despite everything Linda had put him and Ruby through, he found himself feeling sorry for her. She was clearly a frightened, confused woman who had let her prejudices override her common sense. "Officers," Kevin said, walking back toward the group, "I don't want to press charges. I think this has been a learning experience for everyone involved." Ruby looked up at her father with admiration. "Daddy, you're being nice to the lady even though she was mean to us." "That's what good people do, sweetheart. They try to make things better, not worse." Linda looked at Kevin with tears in her eyes. "Why are you being kind to me?" "I was horrible to you and your daughter." Kevin considered his answer carefully, because the silence that followed Kevin's words was heavy with emotion and realization. Linda stood there with tears streaming down her face, finally understanding the full weight of what she had done. She had called the police on a man who dedicated his life to saving children, someone who had been honored by the very police department she had called. "I don't know what to say," Linda whispered, her voice barely audible. I've lived in this neighborhood for 15 years and I thought I was a good person. I thought I was protecting people. Ruby, still in her father's arms, studied Linda's face with the intense curiosity that children have for adult emotions they don't fully understand. Why are you crying, lady? The simple question from the little girl made Linda cry even harder. Because I was wrong about you and your daddy, sweetheart. I was very, very wrong. Officer Rodriguez looked at his watch and then at his partner. They still had other calls to respond to, but this situation had become something more than a routine police matter. It had become a teachable moment for everyone involved. Dr. Williams, Officer Thompson said, I want to make sure you have all our contact information in case you need anything related to this incident. Kevin nodded, accepting the business card she offered. Thank you. I hope this kind of thing doesn't happen to other families. We're going to use this as a training example, Rodriguez said. Our department has been working on community relations, and this situation highlights exactly why that training is so important. Linda wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Officers, what should I do? How do I make this right? Before either officer could answer, Ruby spoke up. You could learn about people before you decide they're bad. The wisdom in those simple words from an 8-year-old hit everyone present like a thunderbolt. Out of the mouths of babes, Officer Thompson thought to herself. Kevin looked at his daughter with pride. That's exactly right, Ruby. That's the most important lesson anyone can learn. But how do I do that? Linda asked, directing her question to Kevin. How do I learn about people? How do I make sure I never make this kind of mistake again? Kevin thought for a moment before answering. You could start by actually getting to know your neighbors. Not just watching them from your window, but talking to them. Learning their names, their stories. I volunteer at the Free Children's Clinic every Saturday, Kevin continued. They always need help with non-medical tasks like filing, organizing supplies, playing with children in the waiting room. Maybe volunteering would help you see people differently. Linda looked surprised. You would want me to volunteer at the same place where you work? After what I did? Everyone deserves a chance to grow and change, Kevin said. The children at the clinic don't care what color your skin is or what mistakes you've made in the past. They just need people who care about them. Officer Rodriguez was impressed by Kevin's generosity of spirit. In his 12 years on the force, he had rarely seen someone respond to prejudice with such grace and wisdom. Dr. Williams, you're a better man than most, Rodriguez said. Not many people would respond to this situation the way you have. Ruby tugged on her father's sleeve. Daddy, can we finish looking at the Halloween decorations? I still need 3 more pictures for my project. Kevin smiled. Of course, sweetheart. Would you like to continue walking, or should we drive to a different neighborhood? Can we keep walking? I like walking with you. Then walking it is. As Kevin started to leave with Ruby, Linda called out to them. Dr. Williams, wait, please. They turned back to face her. I want to apologize properly, Linda said, taking a deep breath. To both of you. Ruby, I'm sorry I scared you and made you cry. Your daddy is obviously a wonderful father and a good man. I was wrong to call the police. And I was wrong to assume bad things about you just because. She struggled to finish the sentence. Because we don't look like what you expected to see in your neighborhood, Kevin said gently, helping her find the words. Yes, Linda admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm ashamed of myself. Ruby looked at Linda with the forgiving nature that comes naturally to most children. It's okay. My daddy says everyone makes mistakes sometimes. Your daddy is very wise, Linda said, managing a small smile. Officer Thompson cleared her throat. Ma'am, I want to remind you that this conversation doesn't change the fact that you filed a false police report. However, Dr. Williams' willingness not to press charges, combined with your apparent remorse, means we'll be documenting this as a community education opportunity, rather than pursuing legal action. What does that mean? Linda asked. It means you'll be required to attend a community relations workshop that our department offers, Rodriguez explained. It's designed to help people understand unconscious bias and how it affects their interactions with others. I'll do that, Linda said immediately. And I'll look into volunteering at the clinic Dr. Williams mentioned. Kevin nodded approvingly. The clinic coordinator's name is Mrs. Patterson. Tell her I recommended you, and that you're interested in learning more about serving the community. Daddy, Ruby said, if she volunteers at your clinic, maybe she can meet some of the children you help. Then she'll know how good you are at fixing sick kids. That's a wonderful idea, Ruby, Kevin said. Officer Rodriguez looked around at the small group that had gathered on this quiet suburban street. When he had responded to the call about suspicious activity, he had expected a routine interaction that would be resolved in a few minutes. Instead, he had witnessed something much more significant. "Dr. Williams, before you go, I want to ask you something," Rodriguez said. "Would you be willing to speak at one of our community relations workshops? Your perspective on this situation could really help other people understand how their assumptions affect others." Kevin considered the request. "I'd be willing to do that, yes, but I'd want to bring Ruby with me if that's appropriate. I think people need to hear her perspective too." "I think that would be powerful," Officer Thompson agreed. "Can I tell them about my Halloween project?" Ruby asked excitedly. "And about how we were just taking pictures of decorations?" "Absolutely, sweetheart. Your story is just as important as mine." Linda watched this exchange with growing amazement. Not only had Kevin forgiven her for the terrible mistake she had made, but he was willing to turn the experience into something positive that could help other people. "Dr. Williams," she said, "I don't deserve your kindness, but I'm grateful for it. I promise I'll do better." "We all can do better," Kevin replied. "That's what makes us human." As the police officers prepared to leave, Officer Rodriguez handed Kevin another business card. "This has my direct number on it. If you ever experience anything like this again, please call me personally." "Thank you, officer. I hope I won't need to use it, but I appreciate the gesture." The officers walked back to their patrol car, both of them reflecting on what they had just witnessed. Cases like this were why they had joined the police force in the first place, to serve and protect the community. But today they had learned that sometimes the best way to protect people was to help them understand each other better. As Kevin and Ruby resumed their walk, Ruby looked up at her father with serious 8-year-old eyes. "Daddy, why do some people think bad things about us before they know us?" Kevin took a deep breath, knowing this was one of those important parenting moments that would stick with his daughter for the rest of her life. "Some people are afraid of things they don't understand, sweetheart, and sometimes that fear makes them act in ways that aren't very nice. But the best thing we can do is keep being kind, keep being ourselves, and help people learn that there's nothing to be afraid of. Like how you helped that crying lady learn that you're a good doctor. Exactly like that, Ruby, exactly like that." They continued down the street, Ruby's excitement about her Halloween project fully restored as she spotted a house decorated with friendly ghosts dancing in the front yard. Behind them, Linda stood in her driveway, watching them go and thinking about how she could become the kind of person who built bridges instead of walls. The afternoon sun was beginning to set, casting golden light through the autumn leaves. It had been a day that changed everyone involved in ways both small and profound. And as Kevin took another picture of Halloween decorations for his daughter's school project, he felt grateful for the lesson in forgiveness and understanding that they had all learned together. And resentment don't solve anything, but maybe understanding can.